Welcome to People Love Process. Creating vector-based artwork is like any skill. The more you do it, the better you get. Now, several years ago, I created a neon-style design, but recently, when I wanted to use that same aesthetic on a different project, I went to do it again, and I kind of figured out another way of pulling it off. And that makes it an easier process. Not only that, it creates a really nice asset you can use moving forward. So in this movie, I want to show you how you can create your own custom neon assets and apply them whenever you want. Now, my source of inspiration initially, and this goes back about 5 years or so, I had a friend who was kind of, if you ever heard of the term secret shopper, where a company hires him or her to go into a facility and do business and then rate the customer service they got. That's how these bigger brands figure out the pain points of dealing with their audience who they're trying to sell and provide services to. Well, he was doing that, but it wasn't for buying stuff. It was for movie theaters. So he got all these passes to go to movies. And of course, he didn't want to go to the movies by himself. So he'd always call me up and say, "Hey, Vaughn, you want to go see this movie?" I go, not really. And he goes, "You don't have to pay for it." And I go, "Okay, I'll go." So I went with him one night, and we got out of the theater, and I was just walking down the street. It's a small town here in Oregon. And I saw this neon in the front window of a small restaurant business, and I go, "Wow, that's really cool." So I just went up and took a picture. It was at night, so it was dark outside. You can see this photograph of, I believe it's like a Japanese beer brand, but I really liked it. And as I was looking at this, I'm going, man, I need to create a design that's kind of capturing this essence. And so that's what I set out to do. So all I did is, it's simple gesture drawing. If you look at this design, all it is lines. Even the typography has been broken up into lines because neon, as it bends and curves to form letters and shapes, it can't come to a sharp point. So they create that illusion of gaps in here because it has to come to an end, and then they usually paint the glass black so you don't see it. So the only part glowing is the gas within the tube that's a certain kind of colored glass. So to the process where this starts is drawing, but it's super easy gesture drawing. So I decided I wanted to play off of this style. And so this was kind of the artwork I created. So not a complex drawing format. This is a symmetric drawing. So what's reflected on the left and right are pretty much the same, other than his pointed tail. And on one side, we have the pitchfork. But all it is lines. And that's all you have to think about. They don't have to connect because you want these gaps in them to give that authenticity once we build the shapes. And when it comes to building, it doesn't get any more basic either. All these are just vector strokes. So it's super easy. And if you draw it out and figure it out, then it's going to make building going forward even faster. Now, the only part that is a little tricky, because typefaces are shapes. They're not based off of strokes. But if you look online and you Google for like CAD fonts, that's CAD drawing fonts, most of those are based off of just strokes. They're not based off of shapes because of the way the CAD system works. And you can download a lot of free ones online. And if you don't want to do what I did, which is take an existing typeface that's pretty geometric, we don't have, thankfully, there wasn't any letter S's in it because that would be really hard to pull off and make nice and precise. This was just kind of derived from a font, but I broke it into just a simple stroke base because we're going to turn these into the tubes that make up the neon. And I'm just walking you through the design I did years ago just to show you where that ended. Then I'm going to show you how to create your own, and we're going to apply it to a bunch of different things so you get an idea of how you can use it. But on this, part of the neon aesthetic that makes neon really cool is it's just glass tubes, and those glass tubes are bent, and they never come to a point like this. So if I select all of these strokes, and I went to the strokes control here, and we just beefed up this line. Let's go to 6, and I deselect it. Well, you'll notice when it comes to the point up here on the horn on this side and on the opposing side, it gets flat there. That's because on a stroke, you have certain controls. And if we look at the stroke panel here, we have the corner. That's normal. We have a rounded corner. This is what we'll be changing it to. And then you have here, I believe they call this a bevel corner. If you're in the UK, you might refer to it as chamfered. Same difference. Same style, that is. If we go up to the caps are when a stroke or path comes to the end, whether it's this end of this horn or this end of the path over here, it either has, the first one's called the butt cap, the middle one's called a round cap, and the last one's called a projected cap. Now, personally, I thought the one that looks like a butt should have been called the butt cap, and that's the round one. Come on, that's obvious. I don't know how they probably have a historic reason for naming it this, but for me, it makes more sense if the round one was the butt cap, and they could have called this the flat cap. That makes more sense than calling it butt cap. But once again, it probably has a history to the names and the way they were derived. So I'm probably way off on that, but nevertheless, once again, the first one, butt cap, round cap, and this last one is projected cap. So what we want to do is we want to change all these paths. I'm just going to go Command A. We'll select all of them. We're going to change it so wherever it comes to a corner, it's going to round that corner because that's what neon does when it's bent. And at the end, the cap, we're going to use the round cap here. And we'll click on that. And so you can see how it's already given those characteristics that you find in neon. So where it gets to this point, it's just rounding. And that's the key to this style is you want to round these things. So down here, we have the gaps in it because the neon needs those breaks to actually bend and form around those. So once we figure out the overall dimension or weight of the tubing that we're going to use, and that's going to be dependent upon what your final size is for your artwork. So for ours, it's 6 points here. Ultimately, when it was all said and done, this is how my design came out. And all this was simply just strokes with the same stroke color behind it, but full value and Gaussian blurred to get this effect. And the one on top is just tints of what the glow color is. So the eyes are actually green, but this is like a 15% tint of the green. Now I included this Diablo Ink resource or source file in the exercise files for this movie, so you can deconstruct that if you want to figure out more of that. So I'm going to walk you through how you can create your own asset now and save it as a graphic style so you can use it later. So let's go ahead and jump on that. It all starts with a stroke, obviously. And all of these are going to be based on strokes. But what we're going to do is we're going to be using the appearance panel. Now in Illustrator, you have the layers panel. You can see that over here. And you have what I call the scary basement, which if you click this triangle here, it'll go into the sub layers of every primary layer. I never use that. Usually what I do is I'll go into the layer options menu, and I'll go to panel options. I'll bring it up, and I'll just go show layers only, and then I'll go OK, and it just takes away that sublayer. If you organize everything in your layers on primary layers, you never have to go into sublayers, which I call the scary basement of Illustrator, because one single anchor point could have no fill and no stroke, and it'll have its own sublayer, which is, in my opinion, kind of nuts. So I always organize this way. I never have sublayers turned on. And you don't have to do that either. Just get in the habit of using layers and putting it in a hierarchy that makes sense, and take the time to name your layers too. That way, in 3 years, you go back to your file, you can figure out everything, and you don't have to kind of click around and try to discover what to do. So let's go ahead and create this attribute, and we're going to use the appearance panel. And the appearance panel, much like the layers panel, has the ability to do layers. It's object oriented though, meaning we have this one stroke selected, and this one stroke you can see here is 3 points, and it's colored white here. You can color it any color you want, but in this case it's colored white, and it's 3 points. Doesn't have any fill, so there is no fill color in there. On this one object, we can apply multiple attributes. And it will layer them based off of the layering we have in this panel. And that's all we're going to do now, is we're just going to create more attributes here. And just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. You don't need to see the full path that's going off behind the layers. That's fine. I just want you to be able to see exactly what I'm doing. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to beef up this line, because I want this line to be a lot thicker. So we'll go to, let's say, 7. And all we're going to do here is we're going to also turn on those characteristics of a stroke, which are the end cap. Since it's straight, the round corner doesn't really matter. But when it applies to a different shape, once we turn it into a style, it will. So you'll want to have the round corners selected as well. All we're going to do is we're going to go here. I'm going to color it this teal color instead of white, like that. So that's the first step we're going to do. The second step we're going to do is we're going to create a drop shadow. So all I'm going to do is right now we have this stroke color selected. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the option menu of the appearance palette, and I'm going to go add new stroke. It's going to remember your last setting, so you can see the one right under it, same size, same color. We're going to change this to a nice black color here. And by the way, I should point that out. If we go to the black over here and I click into this, you can see this is a process black. That's important. We're working in CMYK, so I almost always use process black in CMYK. If you use RGB, you'd want to use an RGB equivalent black. So I just wanted to point that out. So we've just made a copy. If I turn off the preview icon for the layer above, you can see you can't see it because the background's black. So don't worry about it. Let's turn that back on. Make sure we have this layer selected now, because what we want to do is we want to apply some more attributes. And if we go ahead and decollapse this, you can see we have the ability to set opacity and the ability to set a blend mode. And we're going to do that as well. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and, just so you can see what we're doing, let's go ahead and color it white. That way you'll see how this applies. With this layer selected, we're going to go to Effects. We're going to go to Distort, Transform, and Transform. It'll bring up this menu here. And all we're going to do is focus on the horizontal and the vertical. Almost sound like the Twilight Zone there. And we're going to punch in 2 here like that, and you can preview it and you can see all it's done. And we'll go ahead and click OK, because that's all we're going to do. You can see it's created a drop shadow, but we don't want it white. I just did that so you could see it. So let's turn it back into black there, even though you can't see it. Don't worry about it. We'll click on opacity. I don't want the opacity to be 100%. We're going to set this for 40, and we're going to apply multiply blend mode to this. And all those attributes are now applied to this stroke under this stroke. So we have 2 attributes assigned to this one vector object, in this case, a stroke. Let's create the next one. The next one we're going to do another stroke. So we'll select this layer. We'll go here and we'll go add new stroke. Once again, it's going to remember the last one you selected. And on this one, all I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the size to 4 instead of 7. And what I want to do on this one, I'll go ahead and open this up, is I want to select this, and on this stroke itself, just make sure you have the layer in the appearance panel selected. You wouldn't want to do this by having this selected, then going over here and doing what I'm showing you. It's going to apply to whatever layer within the appearance panel you have selected. So we're going to make sure we have that layer selected. Because I'm using global color, which is denoted by this white triangle in the bottom right, I'm going to go to the color panel here, and all I'm going to do is adjust the opacity, or I'm sorry, the tint of this base color. So right now it's 100% value, and I want to knock this down quite a bit. So we're going to go to about, let's try 60% value. And so you can see how it's done this on the inside. That's fine. That looks good. Now the next thing we're going to do with that selected, we're going to go down here to effects. We're going to click on effects. We're going to go down to, let's see, blur, Gaussian blur. We'll open that up. And right now it's default to 18. That's way too much. All we want is 2 pixels. We can preview it, and you can see it just creates a glow. So diffuse that. We'll click OK. And you can see if we look at the attributes, this is why I made it so it wasn't collapsed, so you could see that it applies that to this layer. So that's one more attribute. That's the third attribute we've added to this. We have 3 right now stacked in the appearance panel. We're going to do several more. So the next one I want to do is I'm going to add another stroke, another new stroke. It's going to remember our last setting. This one, I want the color, I want white like that. And all we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and let's see what we have 2 points. I want the white. Let's go ahead and open this up and go to opacity. And on the opacity, I want to adjust it. I don't want the value 100%. So we're going to go 50 like that. You can see how it's added this here. Now all we want to do is we want to go to the Gaussian blur, and we'll go ahead and go to effects with, make sure we have this layer selected. Go to effects, go to blur, Gaussian blur. It'll remember the same setting. We're going to use the same setting, so we'll click OK. And so it's added a little more glow there. But the next thing I want to do is having this layer in the appearance panel selected. We're going to now transform it. So we'll go back to transform under distort and transform. And on this one, I want to do the same type of shift, but I want it to be less. So we'll go -1. We're going to do it in a negative sense like that. And if I go preview, you can see all it's done is it shifted that highlight here up and to the left a little bit. This is going to act as part of the highlight of our neon tubing when it's all said and done. So we can go ahead and collapse this layer. So you can see right now we have 4 attributes applied to this one object. We're going to go ahead and add another one. We'll add a new stroke. And by the way, you could add fills if you're doing different kinds of graphics. We're just dealing with all strokes here, since that's going to kind of help us pull it off. The next thing we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to beef this up to, let's see, probably 7. Our original size like that. I don't want this color though. I want the color to be teal like that. And I just realized I actually have this in the wrong location. So much like the layers palette, all you have to do is grab this layer and we can move it down to the very bottom. I want it below the shadow because this is where the glow effect's going to start happening. This is what we want to do with this. So we're going to have this selected now, and I don't want the glow effects to be applied to 100% value. So I'm going to go back to the color palette, and on this, I'm going to go to 70 here. And you can't see it since it's behind everything, but now with this selected, we're just going to go to Effects. We're going to go to Stylize. We're going to go to Outer Glow. We'll click that. It'll open up the control menu for that. And here we're going to go ahead and select Normal. And we don't want we want this color. We'll do, believe it's this one. Click OK. And the opacity here, we want this 70%. And the amount of blurs, let's try 5. It's kind of barely peeking out. You can see how the shadow's showing up now. I think it needs to be beefed up. Let's go 8. That looks pretty good. Now it's pretty faint, but that's okay because we're going to add another glow to it. And we'll go ahead and click OK. So that's applied that glow. We're just going to go ahead and add a new stroke to this. Make sure this one's on the bottom. And we'll use the same color. We're going to use the same fill color. All we're going to do is we're going to adjust the glow. So we'll go in here. We'll select this. And we're going to go here to Stylize. And we're going to go to Outer Glow. Open it up. And last time we did 70. This time I want to do 100. Oop, not 1,000, 100. And I want to bump this up one more to 9. And so now you can see how that glow is standing out. So why did I stack 2 glows on top of each other, or one glow on top of another glow? Why didn't I just do it with the first one? Well, I found it's hard to get the intensity the way you want by just trying to limit it to 1. If I turn this off, you can see it, even if I put it in 100%, it'd be too faint. So, and I tried to do that initially when I was doing this, but I realized if I just add another one, use the same color values and just adjust the opacity, I can control it a lot easier and get the look and feel that I want. So that's why I did that. So now if we look at our appearance panel, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attributes applied to one object. We're going to do the very last one. The very last one's going to be all the way at the top. So we're going to add another stroke. And on this one, the stroke will be white. And then the size of the stroke, we're going to go a little smaller, 1.5. Like that. And all we're going to do here is we're going to adjust the opacity. So let's go ahead and click on this, go to opacity. I don't want it full value, so we'll go 70 like that. That looks fine. And now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to adjust using transform. So we'll go back to distort. Oops, make sure we're on this layer here. And let's go to Distort, Transform, open this up. And this is where we're going to, once again, match the same settings we did on that subtle glow that shifted up to create the base of the highlight. This is going to be almost work as the hot spot of the highlight, if you will. And we're going to punch in minus 1.5 and minus 1.5. Like that. And we're going to go ahead and click OK. Now, if you're doing this and you think this is too intense, this is the beauty of the appearance panel. Maybe you're looking at this going, that doesn't look too bad, but I think that highlight's a little too opaque. Right now it's 70. It only has 30%. Transparency to it. So if you wanted to, you could knock this down to 50 like that. And you can see what that looks like and just make a comparison and decide if you like that or not. I think that's fine. We'll go ahead and just keep it that, although initially I was going to do 70. I think that looks fine. And so if we zoom out a little bit, you can see we have almost looks like a laser bolt in a Star Wars gun coming out. But this is, just think of a neon tube. Maybe it's Harry Potter's wand. It'd break really easy if it was. So all we're going to do with this, like this, is we're just going to select it and we're going to drag and drop it into the graphic styles here. And you can see it's created a graphic style. If I double click on this, we can name it. So maybe we go neon effects teal, like that. So now every time we want to use this, we can. So I want to show you how you can put these kind of resources to use once you create them. Now, I should point out that if I create another stroke up here, it'll just be a regular white stroke. The appearance panel will reset to that. But anytime you want to use this again, if you select an object with multiple attributes applied to that object, it's always going to bring up the layering of those elements or attributes as tied to that object. And you can adjust any of these. This is what makes it super easy to customize. And because we're using global colors, you'll be able to make all kinds of variations as well. So that's really helpful as you move forward and you start to put this to use. But now that we have a graphic style created, let's go ahead and jump back in, and you can take any kind of stroke-based object like this, and now we can just simply select it and apply the graphic style we made to it. And look at how cool you can get this neon look. Now, this is specifically a continuous line drawing, meaning one continuous line that overlaps. And technically, neon doesn't do this when it overlaps. There would be a gap here and a gap here. But in essence, this is more of a graphic statement than it is trying to get realism. So in this case, I think it's acceptable. But it looks really good. Let's take a look at some other usages to it. Maybe you do some hand lettering. And once again, all of this can just be simply paths. This was actually for a client project. They were starting a business, and I did a bunch of exploration for using the title for their business, which is Peaceful, Easy Feeling. And if we apply that same graphic style neon that we created to it, look how cool that looks. So that's really cool. And where it overlaps, because I created the hierarchy of the paths when I was putting this down, even those parts look great. Now, once again, is it breaking some of the rules of traditional neon? Well, yes, of course, but this is hand lettering. But it gives that appearance, it gives that feeling and that vibe that is so popular with the look and feel of neon. Now, moving forward, you might do something like this. Maybe it's a signage company. And if we select this type here, I can go in and I can apply this neon graphic style I created to this, and you can see how cool and authentic that looks. Now, here's where using global colors comes in. Because right now, if I go to my palette, this is the global color that I created this neon with. And once again, if you go to the appearance panel, you can see all the settings over here. You can see the base color, and it's using that color that's right here in our swatches palette. Well, this is how easy it is. If you decide, well, I don't want this to be this kind of golden yellow color, I want it to be, maybe it's more of a magenta kind of pinkish color. If you click into this, because it's a global color, we can just go ahead. We don't have to touch the object, select the object. We can just go in here, punch in new numbers. So if we want it more pink, maybe we do something like that, and we get rid of all the yellow, and you can preview it right here because of live colors now being in Illustrator, and click OK. you can change it that quick, and you don't have to change anything within your graphic style settings for that you're used as shown in the appearance panel. You don't have to select the object and drop new color into it. All you have to do is change the global color. So it makes usage really, really simple moving forward if you use global colors to do that. Let's go ahead and look at a couple more examples. So I love blues music. I love B.B. King. And this is another one where I did a whole series of continuous line portraits about 3 or 4 years ago now. And it was a lot of fun. B.B. King, this one was one of my favorite ones just because I really love blues music and specifically his. So we're just going to take this continuous line drawing. And even though it's going to break some of those rules, I would still love to get a continuous line illustration I've created like this and turn it into neon. It probably cost a stink load of money though. That's a lot of tubing, but I've created one based off of blue. But look at how cool that looks. Would that not just be awesome on a wall for a club? If I go in here to this logo and we go to the appearance panels, notice I have some attributes here that I have turned off. And if I turn those on, you can see how I just went in and applied attributes to that just to kind of match that aesthetic and style that's in the neon part as well. So there's a lot of things you can do with this moving forward. Now, another aspect, and here's an easy one. My daughter told me, you have to put this in here if you're gonna do it. And I said, okay, we'll put that in. We'll go ahead and make it a cute little pink heart. So I promised I'd do that. So I put that in my movie. Now, getting back to that Diablo design I showed you up front, this is the aesthetic that I ended up with. And notice this system behind it, because technically neon is kind of mapped onto a grid type, basically a sign structure that holds it there. And sometimes it doesn't have backgrounds. The one I showed you initially up front, if we look at what inspired me, you can see that grid work, kind of wireframe, and the tubing where it goes behind. It's the tubing here, but this has been painted black. So the light, the gas that's lighting up the tube is only showing through where it's the clear glass. And then where it gets to a certain endpoint, they paint black. But it has these chains. It has the system that holds it so they can hang it in front of a window in this case. And obviously it needs power supply. I probably would have hid that a little better. But if we compare it to how my mock-up came out, it's pretty authentic to how it looks like in a window. And I'll be completely honest with you. I kind of prefer it without the detail, but I knew some people would go, well, what would it look like if you applied the new neon? Well, it doesn't look bad. I just think it looks almost a little too too mimicky, if you will, in this context. I would actually stay with this because it mimics a photograph where you wouldn't see a lot of that detail. But in a graphic sense, if you're doing something to represent neon and you weren't trying to be photorealistic about it, then I think what we created would work well. So if you want to approach your own theme, your own project, I encourage you to do that. Just pick a theme. Let's say it's the Mona Lisa and you decide you want to create a neon style design based off of the Mona Lisa. Well, think gesture drawing, think lines, think contour continuation. So if you looked at her face and you looked at this side of the face, how would that line go to form that side of her face? How would you simplify her eyes into simple lines? That's all you need to do. So in this case, this is Mona Lisa, the classic. And then here's the gesture drawing that I did just to capture the essence or the contours of those areas. I didn't try to get the background. I don't want the background. I just want the foreground. I want her. I want the elements that are key to her hair, her subtle smile, her eyes, of course, her her garment, not sure what they call that, but super simple gesture drawing. So just take your time. Anybody can do this type of drawing. This is one of the simplest forms of drawing there is. And then once you have this, you can then simply build on top of it in simple strokes using the pen tool. And this is going to be super easy. It's not hard at all. It doesn't have to be perfect. Notice the curve on her hair down here. I didn't like how I drew it. That's fine. When you build it, just make those corrections as you build it. So once you have something like this, it always works best when you're mocking it up on a dark background. So this is where I'll take the same paths. In this case, I wanted it kind of a dark purplish type of background. And all we're going to do, I have this set down here for Mona Lisa. We're just going to select the paths associated with her face here. This will become gold. We're going to select her hair. This is where, don't think too literal here. That's why neon's so fun, is you can use any colors you want. So maybe this is more of a glowing teal color for her hair and her eyes. The mouth kind of needs to be traditional, so we're going to keep that pink. And then on her garment, I just turn it to a nice kind of violet or lighter purple. And you can see how cool this looks. Would anybody look at this and go, I have no idea what style this is? No, they would look at this and they would think neon. Is it exactly what neon would look like, though, in a photorealistic sense? No, it's not. But it works good in a graphic sense. That's why I like it. Now, this works really great for hand lettering. So I hand lettered Mona here. And all this is a white path. So if I select this and I just apply, we'll do the pink since we don't have a lot in our design. You can see how cool this looks together. And this would make a great wall treatment or all kinds of stuff you can do with this. So the best part about creating a creative resource like these neon graphic styles is anytime you want to use them, they're simply one click away, especially if you add them to a new document profile. So every time you create a new document, they're automatically in your graphic styles panel. Now, if you don't want that, you could add it to your Creative Cloud account so it will show up in your library and you could use it that way as well. So a lot of different ways you can use it. Neon is one of those timeless styles that each new generation seems to appreciate. So it's a great way to produce a custom border treatment or a headline or hand lettering like the one I showed you, or maybe it's a brand seal you create as part of a branding effort for a client of yours, and then you want to pitch them on turning it into a neon design for their business. There's lots of ways you could utilize an asset like this. So the exercise files for this movie can be found in the movie's description, and they contain both the Diablo design source files I showed you up front and a set of pre-made neon graphic styles that you can immediately use and deconstruct to learn more. So if you like this movie, I'd appreciate you sharing a link with a friend. And I'd like to thank TK. You know who you are, who has become a PPLLUV fan member. TK and anyone else who becomes a member can access free content each month. So thank you, TK, for helping to produce this content. It's much appreciated. Thank you to everyone for watching PPLLUV Process. And as always, I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.